Listen, I'm okay with pointing the finger at Mike Tomlin when I feel it's merited. I do it a lot. I might do it too much. But when it comes to Broderick Jones, well, I can think of one thing for which to criticize Tomlin. Good morning to you. Good Wednesday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports, and this is Daily Shot of Steelers presented by FanDuel. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into hockey and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Penguins and Pirates, the other two teams in town that I cover. Hope you'll check those out as well. Jones was not good, to say the least, in the Steelers' opening 34-32 victory over the Jets in East Rutherford over the weekend. He allowed 3 sacks of Aaron Rodgers, 4 pressures, and there's just no circumstance in which that should be acceptable. One could argue that there are scant circumstances in which that should allow the player to return to that same starting position the following week. But you know and I know that's not going to change. You know and I know why that's not going to change. And now, after hearing this brief 3-question, 3-answer exchange yesterday at Tomlin's press conference, we know for a fact that it's not going to change.
Mike, how would you evaluate Broderick's performance?
You know, certainly it could be better, but certainly all of our performances could be better. As I mentioned, our quarterback got hit too much, and he was a component of that.
Mike, do you worry about confidence with him at all?
I don't.
Why not?
Because it's football, you know. You don't get to the National Football League by being fragile emotionally, you know. There's a lot of confident guys that I work with. You win some battles, you lose some battles, you come back fighting. That's just the nature of the men that play this game at this level.
Now, that's not exactly Tomlin absolving Jones of how he performed. Even before he'd been asked, he brought up the blocking in general in his opening monologue. And his official stance, as you just heard for yourself, is that, in essence, Jones just needs to be better. Simple as that. All those things you did last week, don't do them this week. And if that were to happen Sunday against the Seahawks, if Jones were to be even, palatable at the position, getting hypothetical here, but maybe he just gives up, a couple of hurries and 1 sack, but otherwise does okay in pass protection and maybe even leads a semi-rejuvenated running game. Everyone's going to be like, yeah, Brod's back. Brod did just fine. Brod's the answer. But more than anything, if we're all going to be honest with ourselves about this, we're going to be thinking what the Steelers management would be thinking, which is, whew, my goodness, that was a close call. But we managed to rescue a first-round pick. And not just that, but a first-round pick where we traded up to get this particular player. And honestly, I'm not sure that that's a terribly unhealthy reaction to have. That's something that ought to be crossing your mind in building a football roster. You don't want to be wasting your first-round picks. You can't be doing that year after year. You can't do that right after Kenny Pickett turns into nothing for you. Blowing picks like that on any regular basis is a great way to stick yourself in a decade-long hole. Kind of like the one in which you don't win a playoff game for nearly that long. You have to make those count. You have to make those stick. And to that extent, strictly within that context, I get it. But here's the reality. How Jones fares on the field doesn't just impact Jones. Because if he keeps playing the way he did in East Rutherford, he's going to be responsible for the Steelers losing the player at their most important position, and that player had himself a hell of a game against the Jets. Aaron Rodgers was dynamite. His feel for the field, the touch on his passes, his presence, his poise, and even his ability to withstand way more of a pass rush than he should have felt. So this is not a normal personnel move to make or not make for Tomlin. This isn't, say, for example, something comparable to whether or not you bench Keanu Benton. Benton's on the other side of the ball. Yeah, you'd like to see him come through as well. This is a second-round pick who arrived here from Wisconsin with a lot of potential, a lot of upside, and even flashed a fair amount of that as a rookie. Since then, it's been nothing of the kind, and the game he just had Sunday might have represented the low point of his now 3-year career in the NFL. But if you leave Benton out there to struggle, if you leave Benton out there to work it out of his system, if you leave Benton out there just to prove that you made a good pick and you can't keep discarding those, you aren't hurting or risking hurting somebody else in the process. If Benton gets steamrollered, he's not putting Aaron Rodgers at risk. He's not putting, arguably, this season, the way it's been designed, at risk. If you believe when Rodgers was signed, and a lot of you will recall that I didn't, that he was going to be somebody around whom you could put together a really hard 1-year push, then what Rodgers did against the Jets should have fortified that 100-fold. And if you believe that the other moves, the big name moves that Omar Khan made, only added to this, well, Sunday was your best friend on that front too. Because DK Metcalf was outstanding, Jonnu Smith was outstanding, and Jalen Ramsey just pretty much sealed the game by himself there at the end. So where do you prioritize all of that versus, yeah, let's make sure that we get Jones right? I'm going to say this and say it and say it. But if your only goal or expectation, even inwardly, like you don't let it out, is for Jones to just be an average left tackle, why not put somebody else out there who actually is an average tackle? Maybe that's in-house. Maybe that's Calvin Anderson. Maybe that's Dylan Cook. Maybe you have to go to the outside and act like it's an emergency, the way the Steelers just did in signing Jabril Peppers because of the injury to Deshaun Elliott. This seems to me like it should come with a much greater urgency to it. It's not as if Jones has shown you something at some point other than, being kind of quiet as a rookie where you would say, yeah, he's just going to bounce back. This is now the norm from him. And this is going to get your 4-time MVP broken. When we come back, J1Q. This segment of Daily Shot is brought to you by our good friends at Mike's Beer Bar. They're located on Federal Street, directly across from PNC Park. Mike has more than 500 beers on tap, including from more than 50 local breweries. Stop in and say hello. Tell Mike we sent you. Mike's Beer Bar. Football season's finally here. Time to check out the latest odds, futures, and win totals on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Think the Steelers are headed to the Super Bowl? Lock in your bets today. Whatever your game, FanDuel Sportsbook delivers the latest lines, futures, and specials so you can join in on all the action. Hey guys, if you're planning to see a Steelers game, use the Game Time app to get your tickets. You can snag new ticket deals before anyone if you set it into your app alerts. The app is easy to use. No surprise fees at checkout. You can see your seat view before buying, and you're getting legit tickets delivered on time. If you're not much of a planner, you can get last-minute deals on tickets right up to the start of the event. Lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app and enter the code DKSteelers into your app profile to get $20 off your first purchase. Today's J1Q comes from Todd Singleton, who says, hey, DK, I wonder why Brian Flores is the seemingly successful defensive coordinator for the Vikings while Terrell Austin appears to still struggle in that role for the Steelers. In your opinion, was Mike Tomlin, as popular fan narrative suggests, threatened by Flores as an alpha male assistant, so he moved on from him? Did Flores feel that being under Tomlin would limit his chances for head coaching interviews, so he wanted to be elsewhere? Was it a contract issue? Was it none of the above? Here's what I've got for you, Todd. One thing I'm always encouraging listeners of this show to do is to speak your mind. I will read every bit of feedback that I get. I will listen to it, as I did last night at a downtown 7-Eleven when a gentleman in line began sharing his opinions about the Steelers defense with me. And hello to you, my friend. I did promise I'd give you a shout out. What I want to hear is what you're really saying. If you're asking about Flores, you're saying Austin stinks and I want Austin gone. Or Tomlin stinks and I want Tomlin gone. Or just get rid of all of them. It's a preferable method of communication around here. Consider that a Pittsburgh thing. We're all kind of like that. I don't believe for a second that Tomlin was threatened by Flores. Otherwise, Tomlin wouldn't have invited him into the fold at a time when, things weren't all that tidy in Flores' world as it related to the National Football League and, of course, in turn, the member teams. So while I do believe that Tomlin prefers to have people under him who are, wholly subservient in everything, let's at least acknowledge what Flores' situation was in Miami, and, for that matter, that the choice of offensive coordinator, the current one, came from a guy who had just been head coach in Atlanta in Arthur Smith. So just throwing it all out there. The bigger reason, I believe, the main reason that Flores wasn't going to have anything happen here was that Tomlin and Austin have their thing with the 3-4 defense and what they believe is the Steelers' way of doing things. I don't happen to share that stance. I feel they've gotten well away from the Steelers' way of doing things, especially as it relates to being aggressive, which really bit them hard over the weekend just now. But that's not a Flores-style defense. That's not what's happening right now in Minneapolis. And that's not something that Tomlin was going to change, even if he had done something completely uncharacteristic and said, you know what, I really want you to stay here, Brian, and I'm ready to tell Terrell to go pound salt. He just, no, that's just not there. It's not in his history. It's not in his makeup. Todd, every once in a while, Tomlin will blurt out. It's usually in darker periods of a given season that it's his defense. He did that at times when Keith Butler was there. He doesn't do it as often now, but it's not any different. And really, there were even whispers about this going back to Dick LeBeau's era, if you can believe that. Tomlin wants the defense. And that will change only when Tomlin is not the head coach anymore. I don't believe that even had Art Rooney gone to him after the 2024 season, as awfully as it ended, and told him, listen, it's time. You've got to split this up. You need to get yourself a real live defensive coordinator and let it go. I believe there's a real chance Tomlin wouldn't have hung around. It's not like he'd have been risking anything. He was going to get paid wherever. I just don't believe that he can do the job that he's doing without also overseeing the defense. In his mind, that's the main issue here. It's not whether or not Flores could have been kept or whether he would have wanted to stay or anything like that. Hope I answered this for you. I appreciate the question, Todd. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Steelers. Can I share something cool with you before we sign off? Ever since I've been letting people know that we have our own app, DK Pittsburgh Sports, we have our own media company, we do our own reporting, we travel everywhere to cover all three of our city's teams. It's only been about a couple of weeks. Gotten 250 people to sign up. By that I mean they've downloaded our app, then they've emailed me, they've asked for the discount that I've been offering, and as of last night, the number of people we've added since then through this specific mechanism is 250. I can't sufficiently tell you how much that means to me, how much that means to what it is that we're doing. We're a completely independent, completely Pittsburgh, completely family-owned business. And for 250 people to come in over a 2-week span and commit to our app, the premium level of the app, and support us this way, I'm not lying when I tell you it's been a really, really uplifting few days. I've appreciated engaging with you guys in these emails back and forth, hearing your stories, being able to thank you directly. And now I'm thanking you here as well. Anybody who wants to do this, download DK Pittsburgh Sports off the App Store into your Apple device, off Google Play onto your Android device. That part is free. When you open it, you're going to see ads. You're going to see that you can't comment because we have a premium level for that. If you want to be in on that premium level, email me, dk@dkpittsburghsports.com. I'll make you a ridiculous discount offer to ensure that you get in and you have the best experience on that app. The Steelers are back at practice this afternoon, and we'll be back with you on a double shot of Steelers at 4 p.m. Eastern, which you can find, guess where, on our app. See you then.